Thank you, Jeff. This was released last week. Woo!
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I picked a story that I hope Jeff would like. I haven't figured out how to do this elegantly. I'm going to start by reading the entry from the newspaper, and then I'm going to go right into the story. From the Sheriff's Call section of the Point Reyes Light, October 11th, 2012. Point Reyes Station. At 10:14 p.m., a woman reported losing a purse at the bakery next to the clothing store that sells dancing shoes. This is called dancing shoes. Dancing shoes, Fred? Mildred asked, putting down the light and staring out the window. It had been a beautiful autumn day, no fog, no mist, and now it was getting colder. She loved fall. Something was rustling in the yard. Was it those doggone raccoons in her gazanias again? Fred, despondent the Giants had lost their third game of the national championship, was trying to tie his shoes. Oh, he remembered the over, in, and out still, but his gut got in the way, and he wasn't as flexible as he used to be. Getting old sucked. Dumb tourists, Mildred huffed. She angled her feet in their Oxfords. She hated her shoes. She still had pretty ankles. She could show off her feet if the goddamn doctor hadn't made her wear her awful orthopedics. You want some help, darling? She asked. Fred was huffing and puffing and making a fuss. I'm fine, he snorted. Ah, Mildred muttered. Lost his hearing aids again. She thought she had a spare pair somewhere. There's no place that sells dancing shoes in town, she said. Fred, frustrated it had taken him 10 minutes to tie his shoes, eyed his wife over his reading glasses. Damsels? In town? Really? Since when? His wife had gone around the bend since she'd been out of the hospital for a sore ankle. Most of the time he tried to ignore her. Shoes. Fred, pay attention, I was talking about shoes. Are you making fun of me? He bellowed. Oh, for heaven's sake, calm your liver, Mildred replied, gesturing for him to sit down. Your heart, darling. He frowned. I bet if there were dancing women in Point Reyes, you wouldn't let me watch them, he said, grumbling and hunting for the remote. My dear husband, don't you remember? Dancing women? I would remember dancing women, he sniffed, wiping his forehead with his sleeve. Seemed kind of hot in the house. Did you turn on the heat again? She was forever cranking it up to 80. No, she lied, closing up her sweater and buttoning it tight. She was a skinny little thing, no internal heat to speak of. She liked it warm. Not my fault, she said suddenly. The dancing or the heat, he asked. You're driving me crazy, she said, disappearing into the back of the house. He didn't listen, ever. What was the use? Seemed like she had to spell everything out for him these days, and it just wasn't worth it. The tent canopy over their bed fluttered from the hot air coming off the furnace vents. She kind of liked it, living like Bedouins. For all his faults, Fred did have his amusing side. She found his extra pair of hearing aids in the medicine chest, hidden behind some 4-year-old aspirin. She didn't understand all that fuss over overdue medicines. In her age, aspirin lasted. As for her, she checked herself in the full-length bathroom mirror. She still had her figure, even though gravity and 80 years had done their work. She stood up tall, holding out her arms like she used to do years ago in Mrs. Brooks' ballet class when she was the smallest girl in her class. She eyed her head and shoulders at an angle in the mirror. Yes, there, a hint of Margot Fontaine. Heck, if Margot Fontaine could dance at 60, she could do it at 80. She rushed into the living room. Fred, dear Fred, she cried, coming over to him and waking him gently, cooing into his ears and brushing his white hair back from his forehead. There wasn't much, but it was silky smooth. She placed his hearing aids in his hands, and he snuffled away. "Care to dance, my love?" she asked, turning an ankle so he could admire her. Fred, without his glasses, couldn't see much, and she was a bit of a blur, but he could feel her all right, light as a bird and wiggling soft on his belly. He nudged over, making room on the couch as she passed him his hearing aids. "They're not going into your brain," she said, "just push." She hesitated a second. "How about a dance?" "Mildred, I'm old and cranky and I can't touch my toes anymore," he grumbled. "As if you ever could." "Right. My point exactly," Fred answered with a sigh. "So what is it that you want? Money? I don't have any. Shoes? You got your rhinestone shoes. The TV remote?" He handed it over with a sigh. "Season's over as far as I'm concerned," he moaned. "I'll put on Perry Como." "Oh, aren't we the hip set? 60-year-old tunes." Mildred turned on the stereo, pulled a record out of the sleeve, set the record on the turntable, and scratched the hell out of it with a needle. "For God's sakes, girl, easy, easy, you'll break the thing," Fred shouted, jumping out of his chair. "I didn't break the boombox, you did," she spat, standing by the volume knob and wanting to turn it up full blast. "And I suppose you'll blame me for the cassette recorder too?" he asked, lifting the needle and setting it on automatic. The turntable arm lifted slowly and clicked into place. "It wasn't my fault you dropped it into the river," she complained, listening to the first few notes and imagining she was 20 again. "The Pelican case said it was waterproof," Fred argued, taking his spot back on the couch. "Please," Mildred asked, putting out one gnarled hand. Fred took it. Her skin was soft and buttery. "You remember the waltz?" she asked. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. "The foxtrot is my favorite," Fred said, taking her hand and counting 1, 2, 3, 4. "You never could count to 3, she said, putting one hand on his shoulder. Did he seem taller or her smaller? She couldn't tell except his shoulder was so far away. "Now, Dick," he said, leading her into a turn. "So you can dance," she said, wanting to add, "despite your bulk." He smelled like pine trees after a rain. As for Fred, holding his wife in his arms was as close to heaven as he'd come in a while. He couldn't remember the last time he had. "Not so bad for an old fart," he said, satisfied, taking her for a stroll across the hard linoleum floor. "So you can still cut a rug," she laughed, "but something doesn't seem right." She stopped suddenly as he slammed into the wall. "Now what?" he shouted. "These shoes are no good. They don't slide. You think that store will have my size? Pink. Yes, of course, with garnets and ribbons and a soft sole. Fred, you listening? What are you doing?" "Sleeping," Fred answered, climbing back to his recliner. "All this activity is wearing me out." Mildred, disappointed, reached over to raise him again, but he didn't seem to hear her, even though he was right there with his eyes closed. She stood up to think and looked beside his arm, a glass of water and 2 pink things inside it, his hearing aids. His soft snore filled the air, and resigned, she took off for her bedroom again. Tomorrow, no matter what, she would buy a pair of dancing shoes. Pink, not black this time. Thank you.
Susanna Solomon, and yes, her very beautiful book is not available out there, but it is on the internet, so please buy a copy.
On Amazon, yes.
And our last, but certainly not least, our last writer of the evening, just a love story. Poems have appeared in the Cafe Review, the Santa Barbara Review, the Clock House Review,